Hi there, welcome to this third interview of the series Aikido Off the Mat. In this video series, we talk to Aikido practitioners who have integrated their practice such that they have taken Aikido out into the community in the form of workshops, talks, and other training that helps people understand and practice concepts and tools derived from Aikido. Today we are talking to Christian Vanhenten, who is based in Belgium. He is a second-generation Aikido practitioner, having started at the tender age of 12. He became a professional engineer and computer scientist, and at some point developed a passion for human development and communication in general. He studied different approaches, including transactional analysis and neuro-linguistic programming, otherwise known as NLP, and created a new approach to modeling the skills of people who are excellent in their fields. In 2008, Christian created AikiCom, offering training programs for stress and conflict management. Because he saw the potential of bringing Aikido off the mat into the real world, he started up the Applied Aikido Association in 2017, whose goal is to make applied Aikido become a recognized field of knowledge, and also to develop a network of professionals applying Aikido to their domain of expertise. Christian, welcome to the show.
Hello.
So hi Christian. You started really early, and so you've got this huge amount of experience, and obviously you're sharing it, out into the world. What was it like? Can you remember when you first started Aikido and how you got started and what the experience was like?
Yes, so like you said, it happened when I was 12. It was 1972. You can make the calculus of how old am I. In fact, my father was my first teacher. So he was one of the first black belt in Belgium. And it was at a time where Aikido was totally unknown here in Belgium. And so it was what I called the pioneers era. So we had to make, to help the people discover what it is. We make some demonstration on parking of supermarkets. And so it was, in my family, it was Aikido every day, all the weekend. And my father used to say, first Aikido, then school, because and for me it was really interesting, because when you are 12, you have on the playground in school, so sometimes you have quarrels, etc., etc. And for me it was a wonderful way to just dismantle aggressivity when I was provoked by some friends challenging me and this kind of thing. And I think it was very useful because, of course, on the playground, you cannot hit with a punch a friend when you just disagree. So just these little soft arm locks of Aikido were for me very useful to just dismantle and de-escalate the aggressivity that could happen. But my father told me, never say to anybody that you are doing Aikido. Because you will be challenged just show me what you know, show me what you can do, etc., etc. And at the same time, also, it was a period of time where Aikido has a kind of different image than today. There was on one side a kind of magical, esoterical dimension, kind of magic pushing people with two fingers, this kind of thing. And on the other side, it was, I think, very much more self-defense oriented. It was more a little bit Aikijutsu than Aikido. It was a kind of much, the arm lock, etc., was very, very emphasized in these times. Now it's more balance, it's more movement, it's more this kind of quality that we are searching. But at this time, it was quite hard for the wrist to practice Aikido.
Right. So you had a few sore wrists and few bruises and things like that.
Yeah. My father almost broke my wrist during a demonstration because I was doing ukimi very fast, very quick. I was
Yeah,
very light this time,
yeah.
and I just walked on a drop of sweat on the
Oh,
mat.
and you
So
slipped a bit.
my foot slipped, and I didn't make the ukemi. So on the kotegaeshi, it was really a bad souvenir.
Okay. So at what point in your playground, or maybe it was past the playground, but in your playground encounters, did you realize that this what you were learning could actually be applied in maybe a not so physical way, but perhaps in a verbal kind of you know
Honestly, in the first 10 years of my practice, not really.
hmm,
Just accepted for the fact that it gave me more self-confidence.
yeah,
And you know that when you are self-confident, you resist much easier to provocation. It's
yeah,
much easier because you feel okay, and
yeah,
then it's easier for you to just transform and deviate what's happening as aggressivity. But then it's when I began to do. What I have to say is that before the age of 12, I had a very difficult use. I will not give the details, but it was really survival mode. I think I remember. So far, I remember. And when I get to my shodan in my black belt at 20, I just asked myself, okay, now what am I going to do with all this? And I began to read and to do workshop about development, self-development, self-help, and psychological dimensions. I read every book I could find around the subject, and then I had this feeling that it's not possible to live all your life with the metaphor of life is a struggle. And I had this kind of belief that you have to fight to survive, you have to fight to live, and it's tiring.
yeah, right,
It's tiring, and I could not imagine that it's possible to live a happy life living this. So
hmm,
I was searching for an answer. Is there another way than this? At the
yeah,
same time, I had this martial art background, and I said, okay. And of course, like everybody knows, Aikido is not really a fight
yeah,
practice. So there is already in the practice this idea of non-violence, of disarming aggressivity, etc. But I could not make the direct link with my daily life,
yes,
and it had to come to till I don't remember when, kind of 30s, when I met a wonderful trainer in hypnosis, because I made some kind of Ericksonian hypnosis, and
oh
this
yeah,
guy, it was Stephen Gilligan, who was direct student of Milton Erickson. He was practicing Aikido, and the
okay,
way he was doing his hypnosis was totally linked with Aikido
mm,
practice, philosophy, and way of behaving.
wow,
And this create a wonderful a flash,
yes,
because at this time, and I still remember when it happens, really, the two paths met. The
yeah,
path of Aikido and all what I did in human science, self-help, etc., suddenly, wow, is the same.
yeah,
Is
yeah,
the same practice,
mm,
and from there, it became so clear that it was really more than just an idea of disarming aggressivity, because it's only words till you know it
yeah,
in concrete way, in your flesh, like I say.
yes,
So it has to become translated. Of course, I could apply this already when I was provoked physically. I
yes,
could do it already, but doing this for everyday life, you have a contradiction, you have a conflict, you have a bad information that you receive. Just applying to this in daily life and with your partner, with your children, etc. to switch from one step to the other, it was quite not so easy. And then suddenly I had a clue. I had really this idea. I just had to work on it a little bit. And it took me, once again, approximately 10 years for now I'm ready. Now I'm ready.
Yeah, and you did quite a lot of preparation work, didn't you? You sort of studied transactional analysis. Is that what it was again? And the NLP probably took up a lot of your intellectual capacity, because NLP can be quite involved, can't it?
Yeah. Yes, and just to make the comparison, because we didn't speak about the Aikido styles and this kind of talk about the kind of practice. So I began Aikido under the teaching of Tamura Sensei for the global style. He was very present in Belgium and in France at this time.
Okay.
And then afterwards, I had a kind of desert period because I was not satisfied with the style. Tamura didn't come anymore to Belgium. And so we had to find some guides, some mentors, or inspiring example. And I could not find it till my father just discovered Christian Tissier, who was very less known than today, of course. But he introduced him in Belgium. And for me, it was also a big revolution. Suddenly, with the style and the methodology of Christian Tissier, I finally could understand what we are doing through the movement.
Right.
So it was just food for my left brain. So just understanding what's happening when I'm doing this movement, when I move on the side, when I stand vertical, and this kind, all this kind of mechanical explanation. But for me, it was important. I could really understand that some people don't need this kind of process, but for me it was really necessary. And this happened on the Aikido side. And then with NLP, it was the same. I discovered NLP like any other practice, but suddenly I began to understand that with NLP, you can really understand this strange process called thinking. So on one side, I understand the movement, and with NLP, I could understand the way we think and have an influence on it.
Yes.
And for me, it was really, really great because it really changed the kind of sensation that we have to undergo this mental stuff that's happening in our mind, and suddenly, oh no, I'm part of a whole, and I can have an influence through the movement, through the thinking, in all direction.
Yeah.
And that for me was really a big revolution. And certainly because I'm an IT guy also, making the discovery, the analysis of what is the structure of the experience we are living is for me very important, and became really a passion, seeing where there is routine, where is patterns, repetition, something that is unique, what is essential in what I'm experimenting. Because if we want to apply Aikido in daily life, like I say, you cannot ask people to do Ikkyo, Nikkyo on the street, in the supermarket. So you have to find what is unique in the movement that is useful in daily life. Otherwise, you cannot do anything with a Shio Nage.
Yes.
So that's so for me, the fact that I was so passionate about finding the structure helped me very much in understanding in a new way the way we are practicing Aikido, so that I could extract what is essential that can be transposed in our daily life, so that we can just apply, really apply this Aiki practice or wisdom in daily life.
So I suppose NLP perhaps it gave you a language in which to, because obviously while you were practicing Aikido, you had some experiential, embodied feelings, felt experience. And would you say that the NLP side then gave you the ability to translate that into language, to articulate it in a verbal way?
I think there are two dimensions that are interesting. First, discovering that the way we behave,
yes,
has a structure.
Mm.
Is a very important information, because if you don't think it is like this, it's difficult to search for something you are not believing in. So for me, the big clash of NLP was, yes, there is a structure and it's possible to identify it, because, okay, life has a structure, but I cannot find it. That's not useful. So knowing there is a structure, the structure doesn't have to be the real one. There is no truth in NLP.
Mm.
What I used to say is that only useful lies.
Yes. Yeah.
When I believe that I can do this kind of activity and why, and because I believe it, I can do it.
Yeah.
It's a useful lie. Maybe I'm not able. So you know this sentence, they did it because they didn't knew it was impossible.
Yes, that's right.
So that's the kind of belief. It's not true, of course, but we don't need. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the first man who ran 1 mile in 4 minutes. Before he did that, people didn't believe it was humanly possible. And then the moment he ran his mile in 4 minutes, I think 12 other people suddenly were able to do it. You know, it's like
yeah. So that's for me very important. And second thing is that the fact that with Aikido on one side, bodily practice, physical practice, and NLP on the other side, mental practice, I was still blocked in this duality. And it was through hypnosis that I discovered that the unconscious is so linked with what's happening below or behind or etc.
Somewhere.
And suddenly the limits were not so clear, and this duality disappeared, dissolved in a certain way. Of course, it still happens, but and then that's why in the model I'm using, I'm speaking about 3 centers rather than 2. You have the mind, you have the body, and I have this emotional center that is making the link between the two, because the emotions are created by what I'm thinking, and at the same time I feel it in my body. So it's the way of joining, and when you have 3 elements together, it's more difficult to get blocked in a dilemma, because for a dilemma you need 2 solutions.
Well, it's
with 3, you always have movement. It's just fluid structure, much more than a line, just a line.
Yes. Wow. So that's pretty cool. And but you also you weren't satisfied to stop there. You also then went into creating your own system, where you and tell us about it, a system of modeling. So you mentioned just now that there's no, NLP is just a useful set of lies. And I remember someone did say, well, there's no truth, but there's some very useful models, and yoga is a model. Science is a model too, so what for you is the meaning of the word model, and what did you develop with that?
Yes, you made me think to add that creating AikiCom was the result of modeling on the NLP way, but there was a huge difficulty. I've made many workshops, and I propose workshop in modeling, but something is lacking in NLP. There is no modeling of physical movement.
Okay.
You can move, but it's always the structure of the mind, and so just you cannot analyze Ikkyo with NLP. It's impossible. There is no tool. There is no pattern. There is nothing. So for me, it was a challenge. How can I just identify the structure without having tools? Yes. And for me, it came to the ground base of NLP, because how did the two creators of NLP create NLP without NLP? So what I like is that how can I come and see what's happening without any preconceived idea to force the structure to be in accordance with what I have. So you know, when your only tool is a hammer, all problems are nails. And that for me was just the big a chance for me not having tools, because I had to just discover what I felt. I have the practice in myself, the sensation. Of course, I didn't try to model Aikido, because Aikido is well known, well described. You don't need to model something that is so precisely described and taught. So for me, it was modeling the benefits of the practice of Aikido into daily life. It was not Aikido as such that I wanted to just model. Right. So and for me, so it was this. At the same time, of course, I had in my mind everything that was taught and written about Aikido practice, Aikido philosophy, Aikido in a spiritual way, all the text and what Yoshiba Sensei, the creator of Aikido, had taught, and that so few people could understand at this time. So I took this as an example, but for me it was really important is I don't want to discover a technique that is just useful for Japanese people. So I was very interested to find what is more humankind, just for what is general, what is universal. And that for me was really important. And then and it's the principle of elegance that we apply in NLP sometimes. It's just finding the little detail that is important. And then if you just teach this detail, you don't need to practice Aikido for 30 years to get it. I'm still convinced about it. And also what came to my mind that was really, and that's hypnosis that taught it to me, is the fact that physical practice is not enough. Reading book about Aikido is not enough. You need to join both at the same time. And what I mean by this is that you have to practice knowing the meaning that's behind the movement that you are doing. So you know what you are practicing. Otherwise, what is the meaning of a gesture if you don't understand it? Sometimes we have, in some kind of practice, you can do it in doing movement like this. We are full of movement that has meaning in so different approaches. So, and for me, what's really important to just identify this. And so what was clear to me is that we have to be conscious when we do the movement to have an impact from this movement to your daily life. Otherwise, it's just what I do, gesticulating in a very low level. And for me, what was really important is just I give the meaning, I propose a gesture, a movement, and then the people can really assimilate. At the same time, the idea that is abstract, but it is incarnated in the gesture, and so they can make it what is important for them.
So how did you so is this what you packaged into AikiCom? So was that like workshops, or how did you present it to people?
Yes, it happened in a very strange way. I was doing a fair, an Aikido, martial art fair in Namur in Belgium, and there was a journalist coming. I want to make an interview. I want to make an interview. Something new, something new. Oh, I have Aikido. No, that's not new. We all know this. And then I was ready with what I had created as models, and I said, but maybe I have something new, really new. It's called AikiCom. Oh, what is it? It was totally not formalized. It was the first time I pronounced the word to somebody. Yeah. And he said, okay, I will come to you later. And then he came and made an interview. It was 1 month later. And then he asked me, okay, we are now in December. And what do you propose as activity with this AikiCom? When? And I told, without having prepared anything, yes, I begin with the first workshop in January. Nothing was ready. Nothing was ready at all, but it just pushed me in my limits, and it's a chance. Otherwise, I would have postponed because not ready. We all know this kind of process. And so I began in January by proposing my first AikiCom training. And of course, it was very simple movement, could be the classical Tai Sabaki that we all know, but always illustrating and asking what is the feeling of the people. So it's very interactive. So it's really seeing, and you know, when you teach Aikido with a beginner, there are so many problems in the way they are doing the movement. You could pass the whole day correcting all the details. So for me, the originality of the practice is just to identify just this one detail that will change all the rest. It could be just a movement of the shoulder. It could be elbow a little bit lower. It could be have your gaze in a horizontal way. Yeah. Just this simple detail, when they're applied on a good moment, it creates the change. Before it's not good. Sorry. After it's too late. At this moment, if you bring this, and you see the people say, okay, bring your shoulders down, and you see kind of fuzzy gaze. Oh, something happened. You give a little time, and you say, what happened? Yes, and then you have connection with all stories in the past. Wow. Yes, I remember then this, and now I understand. Or next time they say, and I did it when I was in conflict with my wife or with my husband, and I just applied this shoulder down that you taught me last week. And it changed everything.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
That's the magic. That's the magic. Really, that's the magic.
And this first group of people, where did you drag them from? Where did you bribe them to come to your class? I mean, who were these people?
Yeah, it was my huge utopia. I like utopias, but I was thinking that rather than doing one workshop every 3 months for communication, for conflict management, I would like that the people just do training like you do training for jogging or for fitness or for yoga or for Aikido also, and doing a training every week, like a weekly class. And I tried this every Wednesday night, but it was difficult to get people from the same town. And after 3 weeks, I had people. I was already, as an IT guy, I made directly a website. It was still, it was not Web 2.0, no Facebook, etc., but
just HTML.
Yes, I was busy with this. So I had people coming from 60 kilometers from my town, and they told me it's hard to come every Wednesday night. So I had to abandon this idea, and I had to switch into the form of classical workshop once a month or once every 2 months. But it was a kind of grief for me, because this idea of permanent training to keep up to date like a martial arts, I still think is important.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, but it's just that people feel that, you know, they're too busy in life, maybe, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, so between then and at some point you got involved with other practitioners, didn't you? I mean, you kind of you were doing your own thing with your workshops. So at which point did you start maybe realizing that there were other people doing stuff and maybe you wanted to collaborate? And yeah,
Yeah,
what
you're right.
happened there?
I think it's an important question because when I created this AikiCom in 2008, I've been, honestly, I've been criticized by other Aikidoka or federations saying, yes, it's too verbal, words, only the practice is important, etc., etc. And I agree, the practice is important, but
Yeah,
there is
yeah,
place enough for other practices also. I'm not forbidding the physical practice. I'm just adding one dimension. So for me, it wasn't a problem, but it's kind of disturbing because Aikido has evolved. I told about the magical
yeah,
atmosphere and self-defense oriented practice in the beginning of my practice, at least. And now it has become more physical, more almost a sport it's sometimes. So it's sport without competition. So it's just a physical practice. You do it in sport halls.
wow.
The dojo are just now transformed in some kind of yes, fitness rooms, etc., etc. When I created AikiCom, and with the critics I could have from some Aikidokas, not all, of course, I became, am I the only alien thinking that we could apply Aikido so in daily life?
Yeah,
And then I discovered that there were a few Americans who created an association called Aiki Extension, and I took contact with the founder of this movement, and he was just in Paris for the next weekend, so I directly met
wow.
him. And then I discovered that there are many, not so many, but at least enough people who think like me that you could apply Aikido in daily life.
Yeah,
And for me, it was such a relief. I like to be a rebel in a certain way, but
yeah,
finding some peers about things you are thinking, and it's helping because you can exchange, you can grow in your practice, you can confront sometimes, and sometimes also, yes, that's wonderful, I don't do it like this, etc., etc. So it
yes,
was a really exciting period of time, not really satisfying because I directly felt the urge to share it in a wider way. And I had this so deep sensation that if we just work alone in our little part of the world,
yeah,
we are not enough to just have a more impactful effect on humanity, to be general. And that was really I was really hungry of this kind of evolution. And so I was very active since 2009 till now, and that led to the creation of Applied Aikido, because I was tired when I'm going in an enterprise here to propose my service, and I say, do you know that I'm applying Aikido for leadership and this kind of application? And they told me, what's this original stuff that you are presenting? And then I have always to explain, to show, and to say, do you know that I'm not alone doing this?
yeah,
There is this kind of confused, fuzzy approach, and I'm tired of explaining always the same story. And what I saw is that all the people have the same
have the same
experience. They
problem.
always have to explain. So here, let's make it a field. Let's publish around this so that we can just show, yes, there is NLP, there is transactional analysis, there is MBTI, there is Enneagram, there is whatever you want. And there is also something called Applied Aikido. Applied Aikido being a generic term,
Yeah,
because all practices that we all develop are different.
yeah, true. So you started Applied Aikido Association. So what was the response to that, and where is it at the moment?
Yes, it's a great project. Of course, like every great project, it takes much energy to put in place.
The birth, yeah, giving birth. Yeah.
And my feeling was that we have to address to people who are not doing Aikido, because these are the people who could be interested by the wisdom of Aikido so that they could apply it without having to practice Aikido as such.
Yeah.
If they do, it's better, but they don't need it, absolutely. And so I definitely, as the goal of the association is to define this field of knowledge called Applied Aikido, I needed to just find all the professionals, trainer, coach, whatever, teacher sometimes also, who are developing and proposing their own approach, and invite them to gather and to define what do we share in common that is unique and that make the specificity of Applied Aikido. And this is, of course, very difficult sometimes, because when you begin an association, if you are addressing to professionals, they don't have time. They have to propose their training. And you know, also sometimes the world of training and coach is kind of competitive. So the people could feel that sharing my information, I will lose some kind of specificity, originality, this kind of thing. But at the same time, I'm totally convinced that we are not enough for the needs of what's happening in the world.
4 billion or maybe 5 billion people in the world. I think we could split them up between us.
Yeah. And I think, and also it gives so much more credit when you say, okay, I'm part of something bigger than I am.
Yeah. And I think this could be like, you know, where you say you approach businesses or whatever, organizations, and they say, well, who are you, you know, and actually what are you doing, you know, and who's behind you. And so if you can say, well, you know, this is a recognized field. This, you know, people are doing it in the US, in France, and wherever, New Zealand, hopefully soon. And we're backed by this organization, you know, the Applied Aikido Association. I'm an affiliate, or I'm actually a founder member of this. So it all gives a kind of a credibility, which I think organizations tend to look for anyway. So I think it's just going to be really helpful for people who are launching out into their Applied Aikido.
We know that structure loves structure. So it's certainly an element. Of course, you can convince by yourself as a person. It's not a problem as such. But I'm very passionate about what is more general, what is the structure behind. So behind my own originality, and that's what makes the specificity of Applied Aikido, and it's very challenging, is that all Applied Aikido practice are always a conjunction of Aikido with something else. And what makes it original for each specific trainer in Applied Aikido is that we are joining with different approaches. You could join it with nonviolent communication. I do it with NLP. You could do it with yoga, and you could do it with some leadership technique. You could do it with post-traumatic treatment. You could join it with Feldenkrais, mindfulness. So it's all the background of the trainer that creates the specificity of the way they translate it. But it's the same message behind the translation. There is a common message. And each of us are translating with our own sensibility and background. And it's good because it provides a so wide diversity of way of behaving, learning, etc. So we don't need everybody. We just need to find the good person that will just fulfill my desire for growing, desire for changing. And that's also the goal of this association, is just showing to the world that there are different people.
Yes.
But of course, the challenge is just to join this diversity. But
Yes.
I think it's a period of times in our life with the with the web, with internet, that we are so used to accept this diversity. And also, it's in a certain way, it's a fight against our ego. Our ego, we have to accept the humility that I'm just only one part of the puzzle.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think this is very Aiki, the same way that connecting between teachers and mentors and coach, etc., is very Aiki, because Aiki is about connecting with each others and sharing, and also to avoid falling into the trap of I found the truth. I have the final concept.
Yes.
I did it. Nobody has never invented anything. We just compose like music, a new formula. And if it tastes good, it's a good plate for you. You will eat it. And otherwise, there is so many different restaurants as there are different applied Aikido teachers.
Yeah. And so I think you've shared in terms of workshops, you've shared in terms of Aikido classes. So you've shared a lot in your life, and also you've shared in terms of authorship, haven't you? So you've published your book. I mean, I've only seen one of your books. You might have other books, but this particular book, which I am reading at the moment and enjoying very much. Tell us about how you started writing your book, or when you felt that you needed to publish a book. Why did you need to publish a book? And what is it called to start? It's right behind you on your right there. Yes, please show us the.
I don't know if you see it.
So, martial kindness, discovering the Aiki attitude for everyday life. Yeah.
I think what is important is attitude. It's not about a receipt. So it's an attitude. It's a way of behaving and way of being. So it is really addressing the people in all their dimension. And I like the term of martial kindness because, like I told you, in my history, it was life is a struggle. And so stopping to struggle is just being eaten up by sharks around us. So I could not accept just this simple idea. So my intention was just to show the people that, yes, we can stay kind, but we have to be strong. The title in French, because I wrote it in French, is Don't Stop Being Kind, Be Strong. It's not strong with the muscle, it's strong with the centering, with the balancing, with the anchoring the feet on the ground, etc., etc. And also with the mind, so don't let bother by the chaos in your head, etc., etc. This is what I call be strong.
Yeah.
And so, I really have this urge to share, because I think I have an experience, and by being a sensei in my dojo, I could directly see that I was just answering so many questions people are asking themselves. And for me, my main focus point is it possible to behave in a kind way, in a gentle way, in a difficult environment?
Yeah.
Because all self-help books you see is always nice life. It's easier to be nice with friends as long as they stay your friends. But when it began, it is when there is a crisis, when somebody is kind of bad or angry or this kind of thing. You cannot express yourself because they are not listening or aggressive or whatever. And we see on the social networks, it's a beautiful example of what we could meet on this kind of violence, because it is without anybody, it's just virtual. And so I had the urge to write a book, and you know, writing a book, you don't do it for money, because a book doesn't bring you money unless you are a bestseller, and it is not the case. You do it just to share. And certainly my intention in writing this book specifically was just to explain a little bit how it came to be a reality. I think the process of making an approach is just not something that falls on my head one day. It's a process. It's a process, evolution, influences. And so just as an example that you can just evolve and find everything that's also very Aiki, and use what's happening to bring something. And for me, it was just for sharing. Really, my idea since the beginning was just sharing the wisdom of Aikido with another point of view, with another way of seeing things. So, and it's a hard exercise, because when you have to put on paper your ideas, it's so frustrating because I was used to write papers of 3 pages. Yes, I do it in one shot. I write rather easily, but writing 200 pages, when you reach the page 1, your mind has already changed, and you are tempted to change the first page. So it's a torture, really a torture. And I had to decide, everything from now that has changed will be for edition 2.
Right.
It was the only solution I had to, because beginning a book is quite easy. You write some lines and it's okay. But finishing a book is quite challenging, really. That's for me really challenging. And I have at least 3 draft of books for as a follow-up for this book. And I don't have the time to finish it. And I'm hesitating between finishing it and at the same time switching to a more visual or video or online course, etc., because it's easier to change and easier to evolve with this, but still in between for the moment.
So in this book, you know, as far as I'm reading, I'm in 1/3 or 1/4 of the book, and it's fascinating so far. You kind of take us through a few interesting concepts. Like, for instance, you kind of you say Ueshiba's thought, you know, the founder Ueshiba, is an extraordinarily modern response to today's challenges. So what you're saying is that, you know, when Ueshiba died, I mean, when he was alive, he said lots of things which people were going, you know, what's he saying? And what I see you're saying is that, well, when he died, you know, his ideas and all that didn't die with him. What you are saying is that there was something about what he was teaching that's very appropriate for today. What do you mean? Yeah, what do you mean by that?
First, I put aside always the history of Ueshiba. He's a Japanese guy who has known the war. And it was and all his history can be controversial, and I don't make it an idol. Just for me, it's just a person who has a real bright insight at a certain moment in his life. That's what interesting me. You cannot be perfect all your life. So at a certain moment, he had a clear understanding that all this stuff about war and fighting was nonsense, was quite a nonsense. And for me, that was just enough. When I was 12, my father told me that he could have said that you can win at a certain moment in your life, but you will always meet somebody stronger than you. So you have to find something that is not opposing strength.
Yeah.
And I found this very, very, very motivating for me and it's a kind of, for me, it was very simple, but still applicable. And I think he had some, it is his spiritual journey that brought him to this kind of understanding. And
Yeah.
of course, we have to be careful with Yoshiba because he hasn't really written any books. It's always somebody who told me that he told me to somebody, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So, but I think that the essential of this lesson, what he was desiring to transmit, has been transmit, and now we have to make it useful. And how did I do this kind of taking this experience is by trying to join it with other authors' opinions, authors' theories, and finding that there is kind of universal dimension. Because I'm totally not. I love these Oriental, exotical tradition, etc. It's nice and good, but that's not what is interesting me. We are Western people, and we are not Japanese. We can do whatsoever. We never be Japanese. So we have to find, for me, what's important to find what is universal in the message of Yoshiba. And I did it by joining it with some other authors. Could be Ken Wilber, could be Edgar Morin, who is a well-known French thinker, and Martin Buber, and all these kind of approaches, when we could see that, yes, that's really, really interesting. And what is really original is that he's studying peace through fight. And I think this is a good way to approach it. Otherwise, it's just a nice philosophy, and it's embodied. Moreover, it's embodied, and that's very important.
Yeah. Somehow, though, reading your book, I get the sense that you are that you felt that something was lost, though, because you say in one point, you say, well, you talk about the history of Aikido, you talk about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Something got thrown out. What was that?
I don't know in other countries, but in Belgium and in France, it was around the year 2000. I don't remember the year exactly. There was a very strong movement anti-sectarism. I don't know if the word is good in English, but there are people who get killed in some communities, etc. There was a very strong about people who get manipulated, etc., for money most of the time, etc. And so there was a very strong movement rejecting. I remember that even Tai Chi Chuan was considered as a sect. It was crazy at this time. And so it was like as if Aikido has to find a new identity by getting more a sport without competition. So the practice for the practice. And all the teaching of Yoshiba, at the same time, like Endo Sensei was telling in one workshop, he did, yes, we were 20 when we saw and we heard Yoshiba Sensei at this time, around 20. And we, honestly, he was speaking all Japanese syntax, and we could not understand everything he was telling us. We were just waiting for practicing, because when you are 20, you want to practice. So we honestly, I'm not sure we understood what he was saying.
Yes.
We kept something. So there is a kind of mystery around this first age of Aikido, and you see this with all the affiliation and the school that are not existing are just a translation of this. But then and I see just symbolically, you see more and more dojos here in Belgium, probably in other countries. Before we used to put Yoshiba portrait in the dojo, and now more and more this portrait is replaced just by the Kenji Aikido.
Okay.
And more you see the portrait of Yoshiba as a kind of, I don't know why, I don't have the explanation, but for me, just a translation of kind of evolution toward some kind of, I like to make the comparison between Aikido of today is a kind like this plastic toy. We can make a truck. It's perfect. You have all the details within it. It's so perfect. Yeah. And when you compare with the same truck but made in wooden truck, it's more brute. It's more without any kind of detail. But it has a spirit. It has you can feel a spirit in this wooden truck. And sometimes Aikido can have this kind of plastic toy taste. Technically perfect,
right?
Beautiful, elegant, wonderful for condition and physical condition and for health, but lacking a little bit of the spirit, because the spirit has been in a certain way put away to not be labeled as a kind of sectarian movement and activity. And I think this did a bad job for the evolution of Aikido, but it's not lost. It's just for the moment it is put in parentheses. It will emerge, and we see that there are so many dojo players who are just searching to get back in this. It will never like before, but it's a new way. So it's this kind of spirit. And honestly, for my part, I'm not really interested in the spiritual dimension as such, but more the connection with the human way of behaving, living, small psychological, call it whatsoever. Because I don't like the idea that you have to believe something to make it work. It should happen without believing. And then when I'm doing a workshop, I never speak about ki or energy. Oh, yes, I speak about energy, kokyu, or this kind of word. I first put my attention so that they can experiment something. And if they feel something, I say, do you know that it can be linked with this concept, this idea, this esoterical or spiritual concept? And if you are interested, we can speak about it because I'm passionate about it. But I never begin with it.
Right. Yes. Okay, I understand. Do you think that maybe this anti-spiritual kind of, I think I've detected that in quite a number of people. They've kind of pulled back from spirituality. However, you do relate the worldview to quantum physics, and you even mentioned David Bohm and the implicate order. Do you feel that somehow we've kind of gone out of spirituality, but there might be Ueshiba's worldview might actually bring us back to physics, reconnect spirituality with physics? Is that something that you considered?
Yeah, in a certain way, yes. In a certain way, no. I explain. Sometimes science is used to justify any kind of practices, and it is kind of abuse, it's kind of argument of authority, showing that yes, science demonstrate. In fact, do we really need science to prove that mindfulness is useful for doing it? That's the question, of course. So, but nevertheless, for my left brain, it's very nice to see that what you read about what Ueshiba was teaching is coming together and it's totally coherent with what quantist physicians are telling. And at the same time, when you see Bohm, because I'm passionate about David Bohm for his dialogue, it's just outside of quantum physics. In fact, he formatted his mind with quantum physics, but it's not using it to justify behavior we could have in the real world. And sometimes I'm very careful because in self-help practices are exaggerating in this way. So I try to keep the middle place because we have to be careful. We
I
have to be
understand.
careful.
Yeah, yeah. And without wanting to embarrass you too much, but you also mentioned the idea of boundaries, and perhaps I suppose you mentioned it in the context of what we create in our minds to divide us between ourselves, between you and me, and between me and the world. Do you feel that again, Aikido could be a way of exploring softening of boundaries, or is that of any importance? What is it? Yeah.
I think it's a question I will never finish to search for an answer, of course, because it's so wide. But I'm totally convinced that Aikido is just about this question of boundaries. Me with me, the boundary, mental, physical.
True. Yeah.
Me and the other world, me and other you and any kind of other person, me with the system, and that's the true meaning of I. That is meaning marrying, joining, reconnecting. So it's just connecting, but we don't have to fall into the trap of joining is not fusioning. I don't lose my center because I'm practicing with you and I'm connected with you. So this strange balance between staying myself and forgetting that I have a self in a certain way. Yeah. So it's just the boundaries between the two, and that's what we just meet. And when you do an Aikido movement, at a certain moment, when it happens well, it's not always the case, but when it's happened well, you just feel, wow, we switch from the I to the we in a so gentle way, and that's something also I'm quoting later in the book. Maybe you didn't read it. It's about the I-thou relationship from Martin Buber.
Okay.
And I think with this plastic toy feeling Aikido, we are doing Aikido on somebody in a certain way.
Yeah, right.
So you are doing the movement on Uke who's attacking you. And that is the I-it relationship. I consider it in a certain way as a kind object, if I exaggerate a little bit. But it can be like this at a certain way. But when you practice real Aikido, the it become a person, and you get connected in a very subtle way, more than just physical. You feel, and it's a field. It's really a field that you are creating, and it's magic. It's a pity it just lasts a few seconds. That's why we go on. That's why we go on practicing.
That's why we go back next week or next day to see if we can catch it again.
But that's the magic, because just welcoming the other, connecting with the other without losing myself, and this exchange, it's very dynamic. It's never static. It's never fixed. It's always moving, and that's something we learn every time we are practicing Aiki. And it's difficult because it's difficult for, when do you really practice Aikido? Do you ask yourself when you are on the mat? You are learning. Learning is not practicing. Of course you learn, everybody, but when are you doing just now? Wow, let the feeling. Most of the time we repeat the movement that somebody has showed us. Yeah. When do we really practice in this free form? It's rare. When you see, it's 10% of the practice maximum.
It's so fascinating. Time has flown so quickly. Do you have any last words or anything that you wish to tell the world about? Any projects you want to tell about, or anything?
The only thing maybe is the fact that I saw that using AikiCom was a little bit frightening for the people not doing Aikido. Oh, martial art, ooh, I'm afraid of it. And Aikidoists sometimes say, oh, that's not the real Aikido, so I'm not interested neither. So more and more I see that people are reacting more positively when I'm using this expression I use for years now of martial kindness. So I now created this kind of label for just identifying. So what I say is that martial kindness is the attitude I just want to get into, and it is applied through AikiCom as the approach that is teaching this martial kindness. I think it's an important nuance so that the people can just don't be afraid. It's not about martial art as such.
Yes,
it's about a certain philosophy and wisdom that you can learn through it.
So and if people were interested in finding out more about AikiCom, they do it through your website. Is it Aiki? What is your website again?
So it's aikicom.au in French and aikicom.org in English. And now you have, since a few days, martialkindness.com and bienveillancemartiale.com in French. And this will lead to a series of video I'm preparing, an online course, and probably also a YouTube channel for explaining some details about the practice.
Yes.
And so it is just for me three main axes. First is being, how am I with myself? Alignment, balance, etc. Second is communicate. How do I think? How do I translate my thought by speaking? And the third one is acting, because it's so important to just act in the world with what we know.
Yes.
Otherwise, the world will not change without us.
Well, it's been a huge pleasure, Christian, to talk with you and to hear from you. Thank you so much for sharing with us, and all the best with the Applied Aikido Association. I'm joining up straight away. Well, actually, I've kind of joined a little bit. So thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Yes, thank you, Gerald.
Okay.